The night air over Perth was thick with summer heat when the black Subaru WRX blew past the roadblock on Tonkin Highway at 187 kilometers an hour. Red and blue lights painted the darkness as 3 highway patrol cars screamed after it, sirens howling like wounded animals. Inside the Subaru, 29-year-old Jaden J.O. Carter gripped the wheel with blood-slick hands, eyes wide, pupils blown. His passenger, 25-year-old Ethan Reese, pressed a prison-issue shank against his own thigh to stop the bleeding from a wound that was turning the seat crimson. "Slow down and we're dead," Ethan hissed, voice shaking. "They've got the chopper up." J.O. didn't answer. He just floored it, tires screaming as he took the Leach Highway exit at twice the legal speed. Behind them, the police helicopter sliced the sky with its spotlight, turning night to noon on the asphalt. 6 minutes later, the Subaru fishtailed into an industrial dead-end in Welshpool, slammed through a chain-link fence, and buried itself nose-first into a stack of shipping containers. Airbags exploded. Glass rained. And then, silence, except for the thump-thump-thump of the chopper blades overhead. Armed officers swarmed within seconds, rifles up. "Show me your hands." Out of the vehicle. The driver's door creaked open. J.O. stumbled out, hands raised, shirt soaked dark. Ethan didn't move. When police dragged him from the passenger seat, his eyes were already glassy. The shank clattered to the ground beside him, still wet. But it wasn't Ethan's blood that mattered most. It was the blood on the back seat, a single prison-issue pillowcase, stiff and black with dried gore, stuffed with something heavy that left a perfect outline of a human face. Detective Sergeant Rachel Haddo arrived 20 minutes later, pulling on nitrile gloves under the floodlights. The pillowcase was unsealed in front of her. Inside was the severed head of 34-year-old Cal Moreau, feared enforcer for the rebels' outlaw motorcycle gang, reported missing from Casuarina Prison's maximum security wing exactly 72 hours earlier. His eyes were gone, carved out clean. In their place, someone had forced 2 Western Australian 50-cent coins, the ones with the black swan emblem staring out like blind, silver eyes. The media went feral. Headless horror, escaped inmates recaptured after gruesome discovery. But what the headlines didn't say, what only a handful of people inside Western Australia police knew, was that Cal Moreau had been in protective custody. He was days away from testifying against the rebels' national president in a murder-for-hire trial that could have collapsed half the club's empire. And he had vanished from inside Casuarina, the most secure prison in the state, a concrete fortress ringed by razor wire, motion sensors, and guards who carried more firepower than most soldiers. Rachel stared at the head under the floodlights and felt the case sink its teeth into her. Because the coins weren't random. They were a message. In prison lore, a black swan pressed into a dead man's eyes meant only one thing. The debt was paid in full, and the snitch would never see daylight again. By dawn, J.O. and Ethan were back inside Casuarina, this time in separate isolation cells. J.O. refused to speak. Ethan asked for a lawyer and a cigarette, then promptly threw up blood on the interview table. But the real shock came when the prison's internal CCTV was finally pulled. The footage from the night Callum disappeared showed nothing. 43 minutes of black screen across every camera cluster C7, the only corridor that led to the protective wing. Someone had looped the feed. Someone on the inside. Rachel stood in the control room, watching the frozen timestamp, 2:14 a.m. The exact moment Callum Moreau ceased to exist as a living witness. Then her phone buzzed. A single text from an encrypted number. "He's still inside the walls. And he's not finished." She looked up at the bank of monitors showing Casuarina's endless gray corridors, hundreds of cells, miles of concrete, and felt the temperature drop 10 degrees. Because whoever sent that message wasn't warning her. They were counting down. Casuarina Prison squats on a patch of dead scrubland 30 kilometers south of Perth, a brutalist maze of pale concrete and steel that looks like it was designed by someone who hated hope. From the air it resembles a giant concrete octopus, 8 wings radiating from a central hub, every corridor watched by cameras that never blink. Locals call it the Cas. Not the Casuarina. Just the. Like it's the only one that matters. Because once the gate's close behind you, the outside world forgets your name. Rachel Haddo walked through those gates at 5:47 a.m. the morning after the chase, warrant in hand, flanked by 4 tactical officers in black. The air inside smelled of bleach, sweat, and something metallic she didn't want to name. Every inmate on the yard stopped moving when they saw her. Word travels faster than light in here. They knew why she was here. They knew whose head had rolled out of that Subaru. She was here for Callum's killer, and everyone in orange knew the killer was still wearing orange too. The governor, a thin, exhausted man named Alan Pritchard, met her in the admin block with a face the color of old paper. "We've got 980 souls in here, detective." Half of them would have cut Cal's throat for a packet of tobacco. The other half would have done it for free, because he flipped. Rachel didn't smile. "Then let's start with the ones who had access to C7 corridor the night the cameras died." They gave her the list. 23 names. Guards, nurses, kitchen trustees, maintenance crew. And at the very top, circled in red by Internal Affairs, Senior Correctional Officer Marcus Mako Devlin. 12 years on the job. Decorated. Spotless record. The same officer who signed the logbook putting Callum Moreau in solitary at 2200 hours the night he vanished. The same officer who called in sick 4 hours later and wasn't seen again until he clocked back on shift 36 hours after the head was found. Mako was waiting in the staff gym when they came for him, bench pressing 140 kilos like it was nothing, veins like cables in his forearms covered in Rebels ink he claimed was old, from before I went straight. He didn't resist. Just racked the bar, sat up, and smiled with teeth too white for a man who worked in hell. "You're too late," he said quietly. "The Swan has already flown." They tore his house apart that afternoon. Found $87,000 cash vacuum sealed under the spa, a burner phone with one outgoing text sent the night Callum disappeared, coordinates that matched the Welsh pool crash site, and a freezer full of dry ice that had kept Callum's head perfectly preserved for 3 days. Enough to charge him. Enough to remand him. But not enough to sleep at night. Because while Mako sat in an interview room claiming the money was from online gambling, Callum's torso was found at 19:06 that same day. A road crew doing repairs on the prison's perimeter sewer line pried open a manhole outside the south wall. The stench hit them first. Then the dogs started barking. Callum's body, minus head and hands, had been folded like a suitcase, wrapped in prison bedsheets, and wedged into the pipe. Forensics said he'd been alive when the saw started cutting. The message was crystal clear. Even protective custody inside Casuarina wasn't protection. Someone in here could reach anyone, anywhere, anytime. Rachel stood over the remains in the morgue that night, watching the pathologist catalog defense wounds on arms that would never hold his kids again. Her phone buzzed again. Same encrypted number. "Ask the nurse." She marched straight to the prison medical wing and pulled the roster. Only one nurse had been on duty in the protective wing the night Callum vanished. Amy Parks, 27, quiet, well-liked, spotless record. The kind of person no one ever suspects. They brought Amy in at 2 a.m. She cried before they even sat down. Not guilty tears. Terrified tears. "I didn't kill him," she whispered. "But I let them in. They have my little brother. He's only 15. They said if I didn't open the side door to the infirmary at 2:10 exactly, she couldn't finish." Rachel leaned forward. "Who's they, Amy?" Amy looked up, mascara bleeding black rivers down her cheeks. And then every light in the interview room went out. Emergency red lighting kicked in. Alarm screamed. Over the speakers, a calm recorded voice. "Code black. Code black. All units to Wing C." Rachel drew her weapon and ran. When she reached Casuarina's maximum security wing 20 minutes later, she found 3 guards down, throats opened ear to ear, and every cell door on the upper tier standing wide open. In the middle of the corridor, written on the wall in fresh blood, was a single black swan feather and 5 words. "The debt is not paid." The prison went into full lockdown, but it was already too late. 47 of the most dangerous men in Western Australia were loose inside their own fortress. Lights flickered red, klaxons howled, and the air filled with the smell of burning plastic as inmates torched mattresses in celebration. Tactical teams poured in from Perth, rifles up, flashlights carving tunnels through the smoke. Every corridor became a kill zone. Rachel fought her way to the control hub with a shotgun borrowed from a bleeding sergeant. The main servers were on fire. Whoever planned this had known exactly where to strike. Years of CCTV footage, movement logs, visitor records gone in minutes. The prison had been blinded, and someone wanted the world to forget what it had seen. By sunrise, they had recaptured 39 escapees hiding in laundry carts, roof vents, even inside the chapel organ pipes. 8 were still missing, including J.O. Carter, the driver from the Subaru, and Marcus, Mako, Devlin, the guard everyone thought was the mastermind, was found hanged in his own isolation cell with a black swan feather tucked behind his ear. Suicide, the note said. No one believed it. But the real blow came at 9:14 a.m. Amy Parks, the nurse who claimed the rebels had her little brother, was discovered in the medical storage room. She had been crucified to the back wall, with morphine drips driven through her palms. Her tongue was gone. Carved into her forehead, still dripping, were the words, "Snitches get wings." Her 15-year-old brother, Tyler, was found safe at school an hour later. He had never been taken. The rebels never needed him. They only needed Amy to believe they did. Rachel stood in the blood-soaked room and felt the case slip through her fingers like smoke. Everyone who could talk was now dead or missing. The torso, the head, the nurse, the guard, all pieces of a puzzle that refused to form a picture. Then her phone buzzed one last time. Same encrypted number. Look up. She did. High on the ceiling of the medical wing, someone had used a fire extinguisher to paint a giant black swan in red foam. Beneath it, in letters 3 feet tall, "I never left." The realization hit her like a bullet between the eyes. Cal Morrow, the man everyone thought was the victim, the protected witness about to bring down an empire, had never been the target. He was the architect. Forensics finally matched the DNA on the torso, not Callum's. It belonged to a low-level rebels prospect who had vanished 6 months earlier. The real Callum had orchestrated everything from inside protective custody, the fake disappearance, the staged decapitation using a substitute body, the looped cameras, the terrified nurse, the corrupt guard, the mass breakout. All of it designed to erase every trace of his own death, so he could walk out in the chaos, wearing a stolen guard uniform, carrying a dead man's head in a pillowcase as the perfect distraction. The coins in the eyes? His calling card. A promise that he would return to collect every debt the rebels owed him, one eyeball at a time. They found the real Callum 3 months later, living quietly in Bali under a new name, running the entire Western Australian ice trade from a beachfront villa. When Indonesian police kicked in the door, he was sitting by the pool sipping a cocktail, 2 black swans tattooed fresh on his neck. He looked up at the cameras and smiled. "Tell Rachel the debt is paid," he said. But the interest just started. He was extradited, flown back to Perth, and walked straight into Casuarina prison one last time, smiling for the body cam footage that would never be made public. 6 weeks later, another guard was found with 50-cent coins pressed into his eyes. And somewhere in maximum security, in a cell that officially doesn't exist, Callum Morrow is still smiling. Because the black swan never flew away. He just changed cages. If that ending left you frozen, smash subscribe right now. Because next week we go inside the prison that makes Casuarina look like a holiday camp. You are not ready. See you in the dark.